What if some of the most important threats to human health are not only invisible, but barely understood at all? For years, researchers have studied how chemicals, heavy metals, environmental pollutants, other contaminants enter the human body, but a growing area of research is now asking a far more unsettling question. Are the materials or signals inside the body that conventional medical testing is not designed to detect at all? And by the way, are people using it for nefarious purposes? My guest today has spent decades investigating that question. Caroline Mansfield is a registered naturopath, clinical researcher, live and dry blood analyst, specialist, and peer-reviewed scientific author. For more than 25 years, she studied human blood, the effects of environmental toxins that may have an effect on the body. Her research has evolved through a series of human-connected studies called the Human Signal, or NLJD study, which is an investigation into whether signals consistent with electronic or resonant materials can be detected inside the human body. What the heck does that mean? And are these materials producing readings? And can they actually be removed from the body? So are we walking around as some sort of antenna? So that's exactly what Caroline and her team have been studying for years, and she joins us now. Thank you so much for being here. This is a bizarre and incredibly important story, but thank you for your research.
Oh, thank you for having me on today, Clayton. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be on your show, to be able to really talk about the studies, the research program, particularly that I've been running for the last 3 years in relation to what we're calling the transhuman agenda, where they're trying to make us into these biological digital beings. So we're going from sort of a biological being to a biodigital being. We're moving away from Homo sapien to Homo Borg Genesis, as Jesse calls it, who's been on your show previously. We're becoming modified human beings, and people still don't really believe that. The technology is so advanced, you can't see it under a microscope. You can't see the components of the technology under a microscope. You'd need sort of transmission microscopy to go right down to the nano level. So you wouldn't see it with a light microscope, for example. So it's hidden within us. It's there within us, and the research program that I've been running, we didn't set out to look for these signals coming off the human body. Each study kind of built, led to more scientific questions to lead us to the next study. So originally we were just looking at environmental toxins and looking at ways to remediate those, to remove those from the body. I think explaining the journey that led us to this human signal study, I think would be quite interesting for your audience as to how we got to where we did and how we discovered this.
Yeah, in fact, you took the words right out of my mouth, because that's where I wanted to start. Like, what was the trigger for you? You're looking at environmental toxins, I think things we all are used to reading about, going back to, Silent Spring and DDT, being sprayed and killing bald eagles. Like, we're very aware of like the pesticides and all of these things in our environment. Well, I think a lot of us are, or what's sprayed on our fruit, or, those sorts of things. We're obviously seeing the Taco Bell lettuce story that's been making its rounds. So we're very aware of that. But what was like the trigger point or the pivot point for you to start asking the question, wait a minute, maybe there are things here that we can't even see that are affecting the human body? And what were the changes in the human body that you were seeing that you just couldn't correlate to maybe these environmental toxins?
Yeah, so my journey has been obviously a naturopath for 25 years, and I've been seeing patients over this time. Then my work sort of moved into running clinical studies for companies, looking at products and proving out efficacy that the products are doing what they say they're going to do. So I worked for different companies, looking at EMFs and basically how they affect the blood as well. I know Dr. Robert Young was doing a study on the BBC back in 1996 when we were looking at 2G. And he was proving in a study that was aired back then, showing how these EMFs affect our blood. They cause a lot of red blood cell aggregation, and they cause a breakdown of the red blood cells. And then many years later, I was doing a very similar study, but now we're up to 5G. And when you hold your phone just for 10 minutes, you can see the changes in your blood are significant. So a lot of people, when they're sitting in front of their computer, for example, and they're starting to get cold extremities, brain fog, they can't think straight, they're getting headaches, they blame it on, oh, it's the computer. I've been sitting too long, I've been staring too long. But actually, when you actually look at your blood, you can see that it's become highly coagulated. There's a lot of what we call rouleaux sticking together of red blood cells. So now the blood's not flowing, delivering oxygen, etc. So all of these studies, I realize over the years, they all mean something. They've all come together to mean something. It's a bit like when things happen to you in life and you look back and you realize the pieces all fitted together. And I feel this has been my personal journey. So in 2023, a newly established company was born, and they had produced a formula which was a detox product. This is the MasterPeace product. And they asked me whether I would look at the product under the microscope and be able to evaluate it in any way. And I said, well, that's all very well, but when we look at a product under a microscope, this is qualitative analysis, and it's not going to tell us really how your product's detoxing the body. So I said, why don't we run some proper studies on it with third-party lab testing? And this is where the whole journey began. So this was soon after the rollout of the COVID shots. And I really wanted to run a study on graphene oxide because there was a lot of talk that this was inside the COVID shots, among many other nefarious ingredients. And I was asking up and down the labs in the UK, can we test for graphene oxide? And the answer would be no. And I would say, why not? They said, because it's not in the human body. So it was just fortuitous. I found a lab in Germany. It was called IGL Lab or IGL Laboratory, and they were the top epigenetics and environmental toxins lab in Europe. And they had been testing not only graphene oxide, but up to 900 different environmental toxins in the blood since 2009. So I went back to the company and said, look, I found this company, this lab, let's do some research. Let's get a small pilot study going and let's see whether this product can remove. We were looking at plastics, microplastics, and also forever chemicals, but we included the graphene oxide. So we started this study, and lo and behold, the baseline results of the test subjects showed high and very high levels of graphene oxide. Now, 2 of the test subjects had been vaccinated and 1 of them hadn't. I put myself in the study because I wanted to evaluate the product myself, see what effects it had on me. And when you have a small study group like that, the only variable would be that somebody wasn't taking the product. So you couldn't guarantee that. We're not inside, it's not a clinical study like you would have for pharmaceuticals, for example, where everyone's food is controlled, air is controlled, supplements are controlled. So I put myself in the study, and then what I realized was my graphene oxide levels came back high, but I had never taken the COVID shot. So all this information was very interesting and quite shocking, to be honest. So the test subjects, including myself, started taking the product. And what we noticed initially on the 35-day mark, one of the test subjects, graphene oxide levels reduced down to by 90% after 35 days of taking the product at 5 drops twice a day. We were speaking with Dr. Carrie Madej at the time, who was in tears, because this is quite groundbreaking. No one has been able to do studies with graphene oxide, Clayton. If you try and find a lab in America, you won't find one. Nobody is testing the blood for graphene oxide anywhere. So we carried on with the study.
Because of the direct relationship to the vax?
Well, it's just not one of those ingredients that's allowed to be tested. If you went to a clear license lab in America, you would lose your license. Okay, so you can go and test for all the heavy metals and other environmental toxins, but graphene oxide is on the list nowhere. So I don't think they want people to know that this is inside your body. And as I said, this was the only lab I found, and I think it was very fortuitous. I found this lab at the time. So the test I should tell you, the test that we did was called the intracellular electrical capacity test of the lymphocytes. So lymphocytes go around the body and they drink up the extracellular fluid. They're sentinels, so they give off information to let us know, to warn the system if there's a potential threat or what they're picking up on. So this is why the lymphocytes are used in this test. So they're testing the lymphocytes to see what toxins they've come up against inside the body. That's how this test works. So it's the intracellular electrical capacity blood test. So we continue to take the product until the 90-day mark. Everybody was tested again, and everyone's levels came down. So where everyone was starting off at the high and very high ranges and all of these toxins, we tested for polypropylene, polyethylene, PFOAs, PFOS, and graphene oxide. Everyone started off at the high and very high levels. They came down, except for one came down exceptionally low by 90%, but we all came down to what we call the borderline levels, which is below, I think it's 300 nanomoles per liter. And then by the end of the study, everyone had come down to what they call the tolerable range, below 149 nanomoles per liter. So you can see this tracking down. So we knew that this product was removing these toxins, including plastics, which is phenomenal. But now we had this baseline study for graphene oxide. So the company said, great, this is a pilot study. Now let's go on and do a proper study. So we had a much larger cohort and a placebo group. We had, I think it was 22 or 25 participants with a placebo. So we started to run that study, but this time we were looking at in the intracellular electrical capacity test for 27 analytes, including things like atrazine, which is the hormone disrupting chemical, which causes body dysmorphia. And that was used in a study on frogs where the male frogs turned to female frogs. And that was using I think it was 1 part per billion of atrazine. It was what they used in that study. And American tap water has 3 parts per billion.
This is crazy. So I know, I mean, I interviewed Alex Jones years ago and I had dinner with him and we were all, myself and Tucker Carlson, we were all sort of sitting there and he started talking about frogs that were turning gay. And we were all just sort of joking about it. Like, come on, Alex, like this can't be happening. And sure enough, it actually is happening. But the fact that it's in tap water and that people as a result, then like, where is all this body dysmorphia coming from? Like, why are young people suddenly like running to clinics and wanting to have their genitals cut off and want to transition? Like, where is this coming from? It's like it came out of nowhere. Or did it come from atrazine or other chemicals that are in our drinking water?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of the messaging, the propaganda that people don't realize is happening subtly on a daily basis, combined with chemicals that alter the way you think and feel. So yeah, quite shocking. So we had a list of 27 analytes we were going to use for that study, but we also included a hair analysis and a urinalysis test to test for heavy metals, just to prove out that this product could remove heavy metals as well, even though there's thousands of studies on zeolite itself. And then we got everyone's baselines, Clayton. And they all came back, and everyone again was high and very high in graphene oxide and so many of these environmental toxins that we were testing for. And we were waiting just before the 35-day mark when we were going to retest everybody. I got a message from the lab in Germany saying they were having problems with the calibration of their equipment and they couldn't do the testing. We'd already just sent off all the blood at great expense. But it sort of crossed over, they said, with their issue they were having. So we couldn't use that blood. And we were thinking, okay, we're not going to get the 35-day mark. We'll go for the 60-day mark on this study for the environmental toxins. So everyone continued to take the MasterPeace product or the placebo on that particular study. And before we even got to the 60-day mark, I got an email from the lab telling me that the owner had suddenly died. They were no longer offering this environmental toxicity test. The lab closed. It didn't reopen again for 6 months. And when they did reopen, they were now offering like a mitochondrial efficiency test. That test that they had been offering since 2009 was now no longer. You couldn't communicate with the lab. That you would email them, you would try and phone them. I believe that the company tried to get somebody in Germany to go and visit the lab. The whole place was shut down. So that's not usual when a lab owner dies to shut down the whole operation. And what we believe potentially was happening is because at that time we were going online, letting the world know that we've just completed this study for graphene oxide in people. And this was the only lab I could find. And I've asked around many practitioners, and no one else had been able to find a lab that would test for graphene oxide. So at that point, that was, I mean, it was obviously a bad day for our study, but it was a bad day for the human race because now we can't test for graphene oxide. So at the end of that study, we got all the results back and we showed, categorically that this product was removing a lot of these heavy metals, including radionucleotides like cesium and plutonium in the body. People had that in them. You wouldn't believe
Plutonium.
that, yeah, all these different chemicals and radioactive substances in the body. But we were able to prove out that this particular product was removing these from the body. So we were happy with that part. But then we got to thinking, okay, so if we've removed the graphene oxide, there was a study that came up and it was called the Blue Truth documentary. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so this is Dr. Chavez out of Mexico, and he ran a study, a small group again, 6 people, who had been vaccinated, and he took them out to the middle of nowhere in a technology-free environment. The whole thing was filmed, proving out that people were emitting MAC addresses.
Human
So
beings were emitting MAC addresses,
yes,
MAC addresses.
yes. And there was another study called the French experiment where they used 30 test subjects. And again, they were all emitting MAC addresses. So that study is actually open source, and you can go and look at that study online, the equipment that was used. And, during the Bluetooth documentary, which anyone can search online and see, these Bluetooth addresses were coming out of gravestones as well. People buried after taking, around the COVID time. So that was interesting for us. And we thought, well, if we've proven that actual graphene oxide is in people, then I wonder if we can do a study around the Bluetooth signal to see whether by taking the product, it turns off the MAC address. If this is part of the self-assembling technology used for the antenna as a lot of papers have shown. So I was asked to run a study. So I started just to test people with an app that was used in the Bluetooth documentary alongside the professional grade equipment and followed their protocol. I contacted Dr. Chavez and he told me his protocol. And lo and behold, when I was taking people into the middle of fields, 600 feet away from anyone, because that is the circumference for Bluetooth to go out, people were emitting MAC addresses. I was picking up like a radar facility on this particular app. So you could see them moving. I say, walk away from me, walk towards me. And you can see they had no technology on them. So I phoned back to the company. I said, I think we may have a study here. I said, but I can't be the person doing the testing. I'm not qualified in this area. I said, I need to find someone. So I had a good search around and I found a technical expert in Bulgaria who had been doing this research for 4 years. And he'd actually been speaking at telecommunication conferences and government on the phenomenon, trying to warn people that this is what he's been picking up on as well. So I approached him and said, look, we really want to run a study, but we want to do it with professional grade equipment, not just with apps. And we want to use the exact same equipment that's been used in the Bluetooth documentary and the French experiment study. So he said he was very familiar with all that technology and agreed to do the study. So he flew out to the UK. And we did this study, but we wanted to also have it filmed so no one could critique or say we've made it up. So we had a top film producer, Christiana Van Eyck, who is from Holland, and she agreed to come and do all the filming. She wasn't going to make a documentary about it, but she just agreed, I'll film everything for you. So we knew she was a very good person to be doing that for us. So we would meet everybody in the middle of a field. they would have to go through the woods across 2 fields to get to our temporary base station where we had all the equipment set up for the study. And they would walk across the woods, walk across the field, and by the time they were halfway through the second field, would start to pick them up on this equipment and on the app. It's hard for people to understand this, but when you see it,
Well, I mean, I was shocked you mentioned the gravestones thing when I had Jesse Beltran on, who'd been studying this for years, and when they were able to track the individuals who died after having taken the COVID shot, and their bodies were whether filled with graphene oxide or whether it was they're 6 feet under the ground, and they're standing there in a graveyard and picking up Bluetooth signals from the bodies that are dead.
yes,
They're giving off this signal, and this is in our bodies. It's astonishing. I've told friends about this, and their mouth hits the floor.
yeah, it's unbelievable for people to comprehend this. And even myself running the study, I would go home at night and I'd have to close the book, I call it, because it's too much for me to comprehend. It's very dark. Like, no one has agreed to this. There's
Well,
no
and also
informed consent.
just the other part of it too, just having the convenience of this clinic, this lab suddenly shutting down mysteriously, telling you that they don't do these studies anymore. German company. It reminds me of another journalist I interviewed years ago who was doing sampling of the soil samples from underneath where the CIA presumably blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And he managed to get soil samples and send them. He did it clandestinely to a German lab. And I think once they figured out that he was presenting soil samples from the Nord Stream pipe, they basically shut down the entire study. Said, sorry, we can't do that. So there's enormous pressure. It's remarkable that the powers that be, don't want this information getting out there, because they were looking for explosive residue and other things like that could have been traced back to certain state governments. And so anyway, I'm not surprised when I heard that.
Well, he was a brave man doing that as well. So, I mean, it is incredible. I mean, the fact that this chap just died suddenly and there's no information about it, it was just terrible at the time.
So maybe we can go back to the masterpiece part of this. As fans of the show know, I've been taking it for quite a while, and I find it incredible. And you wonder. So you never took the COVID shot, and there are lots of people who haven't. But then you were still finding like some of these chemicals in your body, like graphene oxide and other things. So it's not just for people that took the COVID shot, right?
No, it's not. And this is what the preliminary study we found with the MAC address study. It wasn't just those who had the shot. What I found was the people who had the MAC address, I didn't have a MAC address and I hadn't taken the shot, obviously. But it was mainly people who had taken the shot that did have the MAC address, but also partners of people who'd taken the shot. So if they hadn't, but their partner had, they would test positive. So there is an element of transfection to do with this. And I've spoken to a nanochemist, and he's saying, if you think about it, this nanotechnology is so small, it can go through pores of skin. So when you're sweating, when you're talking, when you're breathing, you can take it in. This is why there is an element of transfection with it. So I do believe
So
this is
when you hear these
gradually.
people, I see people in our chat room a lot. They'll say, "I'm a pure blood. I never took the shot. Pure blood." Yeah. Have you ever hugged a person that took the shot? Have you ever been in the same room with a person that took the shot? So there's transfixion, right?
Yeah, there is an element of transfection, but because I didn't actually have a MAC address, so that made me question, well, maybe when you take the shot and you're getting it put straight into your veins, and maybe you are getting something else that maybe can't be transfected, but it's all hypothesis. We can't quite work out at the moment. It's still like a jigsaw puzzle, a lot of this information. Some people know a lot more, way more than me, and some people less. So I'm just where I'm at with what I know. But let me just finish about this MAC address study. We had everyone come back 35 days later, and it was filmed again. Everybody was still testing positive for the MAC address. We were a little bit sad because we thought that initial test subject who had a 90% reduction, we thought maybe somebody would be switched off. So we asked them to continue taking this product and come back 7 weeks later. And there we are with our action station all set up and all ready to go. And suddenly one of the test subjects appeared around the trees, and we were like, oh, we didn't pick them up on the computer or on the app. So we thought there was something wrong with the equipment. So we turned everything off and turned everything on again. And lo and behold, there was no signal. So, wow, okay, it appears that your signal has been turned off. So we had the next test subject turn up. Again, they didn't appear on the screen. They had no signal. By the time the last test subject turned up, nobody had a signal. And that day was quite euphorious because that meant that by taking this product for, I think it was 11 weeks, and what we believe is by removing the graphene oxide, that it turned off this MAC address that they had been tested positive for at least 3 or 4 times before we started the study.
Wow.
So that was, yeah. So we thought we'd found, well, hey, we found the answer. Great. We can tell people there is a solution, at least this solution for now. I'm sure there'll be others. And then we got a phone call from Jesse, and he phoned up the company, and he said, well, hang on a moment. This isn't just it. He said there's more to it than just the MAC address. We've been testing the MAC address as well. But that doesn't mean that they're not testing positive for these anomalous signals coming off the human body, these semiconductor material signals. So he called me, the company referred him to me, and I was going through the MAC address study. And what I haven't explained is that during that study, there was a specific signal that was coming off the people. It was one packet per second is the signal. And the closest signal to that would be the Find Me mode in your iPhone. You know, when you switch your phone off,
Yeah.
it's still giving out a signal.
Right.
That's your
It'll
Find
even
Me mode.
iOS on the app, the iPhone, the Apple iPhone, excuse me, when you power off the phone, it'll still have a Find Me pinging that lets
Yeah.
you, if you lost it.
Yeah. That gives off 2 packets per second. So let me just explain. If you have a gimbal camera, for example, that's giving off 125 packets per second. It's giving a lot of information from the camera to, transferring it to your computer. So this 1 packet per second is a small amount of information. We don't know what it's giving off or whether it's two-way, for that as well. But yeah, and so when I told that to Jesse, he was like, okay, that's exactly what we found. We found that exact same signal. So he knew we'd done the testing correctly. And he said, right, I'm really keen to do another study with you. And I want to test if people were to take this product, whether it's going to be helping to remove the signal. So this is how this next study progressed. Because unbeknownst to me, by the time I spoke to him, he'd already been giving the product to some of his, I wouldn't call them his patients, but the people that he's been helping with Havana type syndrome symptoms. And they'd had some remediation by taking the product. And he said this is the first time he's ever given them something that they feel there's a relief from their symptoms.
Wow.
So he flew out to the UK and we set up another study. And this time we had 22 participants. So we were gathering these participants for this study, and this is probably the most emotional study actually, because when you're in a room with Jesse, so he was a third-party tester now, when you're watching him scan people in this way, and they're lighting up at specific focal points around their body with the non-linear junction detector scanner. So it's picking up on second harmonics, which is semiconductor material in the body. And it's not random. These are in specific places, I think at nerve endings, your nerve density endings. And they're above the front, the third eye, on the crown of the head, at the back of this occipital area of the head. The left and right TMJ, the outside of the shoulders, on the pecs, on the scapulas. There are specific points that lit up the same places in everybody if they were there. So we had a schematic of a human body for each test subject that he was testing, and we were marking the points and also the intensity of the frequency by percentage, which is given off by the actual tool. And so we gathered the data on 22 test subjects. And there was one particular chap who had avoided having the COVID shot, and he was hoping that he was going to be very low. And he was one of the highest, and he was in tears. He said because during COVID, he went into hospital because he broke his wrist and he needed to have an operation. And one of the hospitals were insisting he has a COVID shot. And he left that hospital in the middle of the night because he said, I'm not having it. And they said, we can't operate on you unless you have it. So he left. And he went to another hospital who said, yeah, we'll operate on you. And they were still asking him about the COVID shot, but they'd agreed to go ahead with the operation without having it. But what he didn't realize is when he signed the consent form 1, where it's saying if we need to make an intervention during the operation, if something, happens or comes up, you're agreeing that we will be able to do an intervention. And it's listing what those particular interventions could be. And one of them is to give you biologics. Now, biologics, by definition, vaccines come under biologics. And he believes that whilst he was under, they gave him the vaccine. So a lot of people go into hospital not realizing when they sign that consent form, they're allowing themselves to have the shot. So he was very, very upset because he hadn't felt right since he had it. And his wife was also tested and she was very high. So, yeah, it was a very emotional study. But what was very interesting, Clayton, is that I invited the 3 of the test subjects who were on the MAC address study to be part of this study because I was very keen to see what they were testing at with Jesse's equipment, having taken MasterPeace at the beginning of the study. And one of the lowest scores, or the lowest score, was a lady who'd been on the MAC address study, who'd been taking MasterPeace consistently. And the second lowest score was the other participant who continue to take MasterPeace after the MAC address study. So we're looking at this study came on about 2.5 to 3 months later. So that gave us some hope that these signals were going to be reduced in the whole cohort. One of the test subjects from the MAC address study, I said, stop taking it. And when she came in to be tested by Jessie, she had high levels of return signals with Jessie. So we know that this technology is getting in us, even if we stop taking it, that it's going to continue to build somehow. So it's in our environment, it's in our food. What is it with transfection, the water we're drinking? So you can't say it's a bit like cleaning your teeth. I clean my teeth, I'm done. It's like you have to keep working at removing this technology and removing these toxins from your body. That was one thing that we did discover. So everybody took the product for 60 days and the study dosage was 15 drops twice a day. I'm not suggesting people take that amount. It is a very potent product. Not to say that people are having problems taking it, but everyone's individual. And if you're a little bit toxic or, your lymphatic system's a bit bunged up, then you may need some extra support or you may need to go in a bit slower and then build up to the 4 or 5 drops a day. But the study dosage was 15 drops twice a day and nobody had any issues. In fact, everyone was feeling amazing on it, which I want to come on to. So everyone came back after 60 days and Jesse flew back over from the States and he was testing everybody again. And the room kind of went quiet because on the baseline testing, the buzzer would go off. It's a very noisy piece of equipment. Every time he hit a node, the buzzer would make a loud sound. But this time he was passing the nonlinear junction scanner over the people, and there was very few buzzing. And even Jesse's drawer was, open. He was, wow, this is much less than, at the baseline. So obviously we had our schematics out when we're plotting all the active spots and the percentage that the machine was giving for each active spot. And what we discovered was at the end of the study that there had been a 78% reduction in the return signals in the cohort from baseline. So this is
78?
roughly 78%.
Wow.
Yeah, reduction. And Jesse said, I've never seen this. I've never seen this ever, that these signals drop. The other thing he's never seen is that a lot of the signals, especially around the head, had completely disappeared. So a lot of people had these on the head, in front of their third eye, the top of the head, at the lower base of their head, at the top of their neck, and the right and left TMJ. Those, and also on the nasal dorsum. and on most of the people, they were gone. And he was, I've never seen this. So
Wow.
there was tears of joy at the end of that study. And especially the chap who was very high, he was one of the lowest when he came back after
And how did he
taking the
feel?
product.
Did he feel completely different?
Well, he did, and a lot of them did. So, what we also ran separately, what we call an heart rate variability test alongside the testing that Jesse was doing. So, at baseline, I took everyone's heart rate variability, which is showing how balanced your autonomic nervous system is. And that is a marker for good health. And at the end of the study, everybody's heart rate variability had improved. So by removing this technology, which is affecting us, with our nervous system, everyone's nervous systems had calmed down and was more in balance. And what we found was that by removing this technology, people were feeling more joy, they were feeling more energy, and they were sleeping better and dreaming better. So whether it can be that this technology removes the background noise in the body, the agitation, so people are sleeping more deeply. And of course, when you sleep more deeply and you go into REM, you're clearing your brain through the lymphatic system of all the rubbish that's in your brain. So maybe this is another way why there's a lot of clearance from the head of this technology. And the people were dreaming better, and people saying they feel like a childlike joy they hadn't experienced for a long time. So there was a lot of amazing anecdotal experiences that people were telling us about, which are all recorded. And the other thing I forgot to mention is that the Die Suddenly team were there to film this whole study. So this is now going to be in the next film that comes out by this Die Suddenly team, Die Suddenly 2, to show again that everything that we're saying, that I'm telling you, was recorded. And you couldn't say, oh, we're just making it up. All the results, every aspect of it was recorded.
Yeah, I mean it's remarkable. And I mean I can just say from my own personal use of it, it's just been incredible, great. And I was sort of warned before taking it, like you're going to have the best night's sleep you've had in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think, well, the thing is, I'm surrounded by electronics on a regular basis, and you think about all of the different whatever sort of particles and graphene oxide and other sort of environmental toxins that we're completely, surrounded by or affected by on a regular basis. Can you talk about really quickly before we let you go, like what's actually in it?
Yeah, so the product is made of it's got the most powerful detoxifier I believe there is, because it's highly magnetized. It's made of zeolites, natural zeolites, which are formed when volcanic ash hits the sea, and it makes these beautiful crystalline crystals, and they're called zeolites. And the only ones fit for human consumption is clinoptilolite. And if you look at any zeolite supplement on the market, it will always be clinoptilolite. And so this powerful negative charge, because the company were able to get this clinoptilolite down to the nano range, what it does is when you put the drops under your tongue, it goes through your mucous membranes in your mouth. It goes everywhere in the body where water goes. So it's going through all into your interstitial fluid, your extracellular fluid, and it's picking up toxins which have a powerful positive charge. So it's grabbing hold of them. It's also covered in sea minerals, because the product is paired with sea mineral plasma. So the beauty of this product is when it's picking up a toxin, it's releasing minerals at a place where a toxin was. So a lot of the time, metals will act like a mineral. It's a poor brother of of the actual mineral. It can do some work, but it's not working as efficiently for that cell. So the minute that toxin's removed and it's replaced with minerals, that cell can start working better as well. So not only is it grabbing hold of toxins, removing it from the body just through the process of urination, defecation, sweat, perspiration and respiration, and in women, menstruation. So it's coming out in all different ways, and also in your hair, because we've discovered that as well. When that cell is starting to work better in itself, because now it's got the minerals that it's needed, then the cell can start saying, hey, we're having a bit of a detox here, because it's picking up on what the body's doing. And so the body will start cleansing itself as well. So it's giving the body a chance to recalibrate itself, as well as the product removing the toxins. So yeah, it's a beautiful product in that way. It's also molecularly identical to your blood in as far as the pH. It's a colloidal solution, so the body recognizes it straight away when it's under the tongue and just goes straight into the body. And because it grabs hold of toxins, there's very little what we call Herxheimer reaction. So a lot of the time when we're trying to detox, a lot of products will go and sort of stir up the toxins. Then you have to take extra chelating agents and hope you're catching all the toxins before it leaves the body. And a lot of the time people can get, detox reactions such as headaches or feeling fatigued, maybe skin reactions, nausea, things like that. But on all the studies I've run, I've only had one or two clients at the very beginning of the study that have maybe felt like a little bit of a reaction. So I say, well, just go back to 1 drop twice a day, then increase to 2 drops twice a day, 3 drops. And by the time they're back up to 5 drops, they're fine. So it's like anything, you just go in slow. If you're very sensitive, if you haven't detoxed before, that's important to know as well.
So about up to about 5 drops at each time.
Yeah, so on the actual bottle, it says 4 drops twice a day. Our studies have always been around 5 drops twice a day, and sometimes up to 15 drops twice a day. But what I should also say is that on the study with Jessie, there was one test subject who just took 5 drops twice a day, not the 15 drops. And she was one of the highest. She had the best results out of just about everybody on 5 drops twice a day. So just because our study was running at 15 drops twice a day, it doesn't mean to say that 5 drops twice a day, may not be, efficient for some other people. So it doesn't mean to say you have to go in hard and heavy. As Dr. Young says, less more often is better than more less often.
Right.
Yeah, so just a little bit at a time to build up.
This is incredible. We'll have links in the description if people want to try it out. And I think we even have like a discount code that we can give people down there as well if they want to try it out. I take it now every day, and it's incredible. And it tastes like seawater. Just a little few drops under the tongue. It tastes like seawater. And again, just being surrounded by all of these toxins and EMF radiation and all these other things. And now with the coming 6G technology, which is about to be rolled out on top of it. So there's no getting away from this stuff. That's the scary part. So we've got to protect ourselves in other ways with what we put into our bodies. Caroline, any final thoughts on this? I'm just reeling.
Yeah.
I'm sort of blown away by all of this. So thank you for your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for allowing me to come on to talk about these studies. I feel like these are the most important studies right now for humanity because nobody else is doing the human testing in relation to this technology that's being found in everybody. And I was listening to your interview with the NSA whistleblower recently, and he was talking about how this surveillance has stepped up since 9/11 when the government did negotiations with telecommunication companies to collect data. And now, everything we do from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep, it's everything's being collected, hence all these ridiculous data centers. And, in my mind, the way I see this, if you don't want to, if you want to try and avoid this technology the only way to avoid it, to stop you becoming a modulated human being, is to really look after your body, to detox, to take something like MasterPeace. We also found that people who move a lot, who exercise and who sweat a lot, they also had the lowest levels in the baseline of our study. So it's really important to be looking after your body at this time because of what's been rolling out. And I feel like this collection of data has become omniscient. It's become omnipresent. It's everywhere. It's becoming very knowledgeable. It's everywhere from the minute you wake up. Everywhere you go, you've got cameras. And it's becoming omnipotent. It's become, anyone who has this data, this knowledge, is powerful. And this should only be God's work. I feel like they're creating a digital avatar of God, So I feel this is a spiritual warfare that's happening. So if you want to protect your families and your loved ones right now, then please pass on this message to get this technology out of you. I'm sure, I'm hoping that there's going to be more and more studies that we can run and that other people will run alongside what we've done to find solutions, other solutions. But right now, I don't know anyone else doing this study who've been proven out that this technology that's in us can be removed.
Well, I love it. And I really appreciate your time today, Caroline. And again, we'll have a link in the description if anyone wants to try it and even get that nice little discount code as well. I hope when the next round of studies come out, you'll come back. We'd love to have you back and talk more about this in the future. And hopefully the progress is substantial. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure.
My name's Jesse Beltran. I'm the current president of an organization where our brand is Mind Nexus Live. I've been one of the leading investigators with the phenomenon called Havana Syndrome or anomalous health incidences. I have been covering this since 2010. I am currently a certified technical counter surveillance measures expert. I have been the lead in doing what is called nonlinear junctions scanning on individuals. And this process started in the United States. Initially starts with an RF detection, and then we verify it with a nonlinear junction depending on our findings. And basically what we're finding is those who are symptomatic were lighting up at very specific focal areas around the human body and coming up positive for whatever reason for semiconductive or silicon-based materials in those areas. And that's what the nonlinear junction detector is designed to do. And we've recently started a study where we're testing non-symptomatic individuals here in the United Kingdom. They are also lighting up in those same areas as the symptomatic individuals. And that had not been the case prior to that jab. Prior to the jab, those who were non-symptomatic, almost 100% of the time, came up negative. They were coming up pretty much what I would expect a symptomatic person to come up positive. Very high, a lot of areas around the human body hitting at 100%, where the nonlinear junction detection indicated there was silicon-based materials. They had been put on a test basis or trial basis of Zeolite Z, or the MasterPeace product. And quite frankly, I was really surprised coming here and doing the secondary exam on these individuals who participated in the testing. There was significant reduction in the areas that were lighting up.
So the results have been absolutely phenomenal and actually better than we could ever have expected. An average reduction across the board so far, and we've got one more day of test results coming in, of 80% reduction of these radio frequencies coming off people's bodies. We've had personal reductions of some people of 98%, but on the whole, it's around about an 80% reduction. This is unprecedented because usually in clinical studies, if you were to get a 30% reduction, that is something that people are very happy to see.
This is why, for the first time in 20 years, 15 years specifically, out in the public, that I've supported anything out there. And so this is quite promising. Yesterday was very emotional for me because I never thought that I would see this. I can tell you 100% of the time post-COVID, I've not tested anyone who did not come up positive in the right, left TMJ, the dorsum, occipital portion, and the base of their neck. And for the first time after they've been on this trial, they are not lighting up. And we are seeing anywhere from 75 to 85% reduction in the findings. And this is quite frankly incredible.
Right superior shoulder, 95%.